Hello everyone and welcome to the Tales of Rein Ravine Realistic Jumping Tutorial, Part 1, on Pixel Ponies and Biomechanics. This tutorial will mostly be spoken, and I apologize for occasional popping as my mic really is not quite up to the task, but I will be adding subtitles to the YouTube version and will also do so for the TikTok version if possible. This guide is intended for anyone looking to get into using the realistic jumping setting, either for the first time, or for those who have maybe already tried it out but are having a bit of a frustrating experience. Before going in, I'm basing this tutorial around you having an understanding of the controls. So I'm assuming basically that you've done all of the lessons and you know what your buttons do. No other knowledge is needed. I will be using Rose for this tutorial to start, as she is the only horse in the demo willing to attempt anything you put in front of her, but her maximum scope is still below the 190 centimeter game cap. This makes her perfect for learning striding, as you can test yourself against obstacles that require you to be very precise, and you'll know if you're doing it properly because you simply won't make the obstacles if you aren't. If you don't have the paid demo, you can do at least the first few exercises with Spot, but because the game limits him to 120 centimeters, even when he is capable of more like 160, it will be harder to tell if you're really nailing the timing, unless you only use the glitch boxes for practice and just skip the combos. But he will work for getting started. Just adjust the heights as needed to suit him. He has a near identical stride length to Rose, so while his frequency is slower, the positioning will be nearly the same. If you've ridden in real life or studied equine biomechanics, you'll be aware that in order to issue a proper cue, you need to know where your horse's feet are, else the horse will either be delayed in their response or unable to respond properly at all. While this is mostly thought of in things like dressage, reining, or any of the events focused on quiet precision, I think it's often lost that it's a mandatory skill to be successful in jumping events. Tales of Rein Ravine tries to reflect this reality by including a realistic jumping setting with a stride window, and an even finer window within that larger one. If you check the "What's this?" next to the realistic jumping setting in the options menu, you'll be shown this image, which gives you a general idea of when the ideal jump time is. You can see the tip puts this image into words and, as a general rule, you want to attempt to jump when the leading front leg hits the ground. Please do bear in mind that this is a game, and while it is the most accurate I have seen, there will of course be inconsistencies with real life. However, I have found it to be very reliable for what it is nonetheless, and real life knowledge can be applied here very easily. I've recorded our buddy Rose here cruising along at her max canter speed. This initial segment is a single stride being looped, so it might appear a bit jarring, but it is accurate. Described very simply, a horse pushes off with their front end, then follows through with their hind end to propel themselves over an obstacle. As Rose canters, you'll notice a shoe appearing. This is the game telling you you're capable of attempting an obstacle from this point in the stride. This is technically the beginning of the jump window, and we can see that Rose's trailing leg is about to touch down, and her leading leg is still a ways off from landing. This would be the point where Rose could consider storing energy for a jump, but if she were to actually attempt to jump from this point, for example, if we approached way too tight into an obstacle, she would have to very abruptly drop her weight, which would damage the forward impulsion and either force her into an awkward, almost straight up and down leap, or cause her to not be able to get the height or distance we'd hope for. Over smaller obstacles, this wouldn't be a big deal, but if we're looking to push some limits, it would be a knock rail. If we wait till about here, her weight is nearly fully underneath her, and she'd be able to continue the forward impulsion while pushing off with much more power. This is about the point where we want to launch from. If we were to wait a bit longer, which is something that could occur if we tried to, say, cut out a stride to the next obstacle on a course without really planning that very well, we'd run into a similar issue as the first case, where Rose would have to abruptly adjust her forward momentum to compensate, making a really big stretch and pushing off hard with her hind end. In real life, this usually results in a horse jumping very long but not very high, and you'll see a lot of falls over obstacles occur this way as the horse slams through the rails, trying to make a save. This is a bit of an odd point. In this game, if you wait till the absolute last moment in the stride window, you get a very long, but also strangely high jump. Rose will continue upwards with her front end, which will bypass most of the first rails on triple bars, and push off really hard with the hind, making wider obstacles easier. I'm not sure if this is intentional and meant to mimic the long jump a horse would take over a ground free water obstacle, or if it's just a bit of a bug. I ain't no professional, so I can't say. Audio cues are incredibly useful in this game, so if you're capable of utilizing them, I would absolutely recommend doing so. Until you get a really good feel, don't play with music or any additional sound outside of the game. Here is the full version of the previous clip, showing Rose cantering for several continuous strides before looping. Pay attention to what it sounds like as her leading front leg strikes the ground. Now that we know what to look and listen for, let's apply this knowledge to a practice line. This line, found in course D, is actually set up nearly perfect for Rose, as well as spot stride, so it's what I recommend learning on. Having the jump set up this way will make it easier to carry a steady rhythm through the line and develop feel. We can't traumatize our horses here, fortunately, so don't worry if you crash and burn a few, or if you're like me, many, many times. If you're feeling brave right out of the gate, you could start with these jumps set at 160 centimeters, as clearing these means you're doing it proper and at least nearly ideal. But if you'd prefer to start lower, that is also totally fine. Don't worry about rating your speed yet, as that is something you can work on after you've got a solid understanding of when to make an attempt. I usually play in third person with my camera at a fairly harsh angle because it helps me to see the depth with greater ease, but I've tried to side angle it a bit more here so y'all can see better. But as I'm going through this line, you can see that I am initiating the jump around the time Rose's leading leg hits the ground. So this is going to conclude part 1. Don't be discouraged if you're failing a lot. I can almost promise you that I have failed for more hours than many people have even played in total. This is difficult, and developing feel takes a lot of time. Just keep practicing. If y'all have any suggestions for part 2, or if you feel like I've missed anything, please do let me know. If you're hearing this on TikTok, be aware that I, for whatever reason, am not always notified of new comments. If you ask a question and don't get an answer, feel free to ask again. I will do my best to check the video for comments I am not notified of, but I still miss quite a few things. Have fun out there, horse nerds, and I'll see you in part 2.